You're going to get a few minutes of a discussion from myself on the patient perspective. As I alluded to in my opening remarks, my opinion initially of trials was factually incorrect. If I hark back to my working life, I was involved quite a lot in investigations, and investigations really needed evidence, and evidence is key to trials. I'm going to use one of my own acronyms here, which is FOG, and that stands for facts, opinions, and guesses. Anytime I was involved in an investigation in my working life, we were always confronted with this situation of facts, opinions, and guesses. And to do an investigation properly, you need to rely upon facts. People will have opinions as to what happened and why it happened. And to a certain extent, they may be factual, but they may be skewed by their particular perspective on it. And then you will have the people who are guessing. And I'm really pleased to be able to say that when it comes to these clinical trials, it is fact-based, as in almost forensic facts that you would see in a court. And in coming to evaluations, we have, as a society, become much more accustomed to making evaluations. You know, when we purchase anything, we look at reviews and we see if it is suitable to what we need. And the same thing happens when it comes to evaluating whether it's worth our while going on a trial. There is strict governance, and it is reassuring from a patient perspective that there is such strict governance of the conduct of trials, as Ben so eloquently explained to us just a few minutes ago. But as in everything in life, when we have to make a decision about something, whether it is a home purchase or whatever, we as an individual will need to know what's in it for me. And we've been diagnosed with CLL. There is a treatment pathway that at some stage, if we're still in active monitoring, may become a requirement for us patients to undertake. And that's one of the opportunities whereby trials may be discussed. And in terms of understanding what's in it for me, the patient information leaflet is critical. And that's, as I said earlier, why we as a patient organization review these documents whenever we're invited to do so, and make sure that it is understandable from a patient perspective, that it is comprehensive, and that it answers all the questions that as a patient I'm likely to want answers to. The other thing I've noticed over the years in clinical trials is that physician discretion has now been removed. In terms of eligibility, as Ben mentioned, it's a simple, in reality, go, no-go test. If you fulfill the criteria for eligibility for a trial, then that trial is open to you. If you don't get to participate. And that's critical from the point of view of the reliability of the trial data. The eligibility has been set for very good scientific reasons. And just because, to use a common term, I'm a good egg and it might be useful for me, my treating consultant doesn't get the opportunity to get me into the trial via the back door. And that means that the results of the trial aren't skewed by having people participating in a trial that shouldn't be there, that it's not designed for. In terms of other types of research, I mentioned earlier, there is research into research. And in that sense, having my data available to the scientific research community. My blood results, maybe my bio data in terms of blood samples or bone marrow samples available for studies. It means that without me lifting a finger, that by signing a waiver to have my data available for scientific clinical evaluation purposes, I can participate in trials. And those trials are often studies or research on research or comparison studies. And in that sense, from an altruistic perspective, I have the satisfaction of at least allowing my data, my specific experiences, how I reacted to medication over those years, to be available. When we were planning this webinar and we were discussing what Ben and myself might say, he was at pains to point out to me that there isn't any bonus, there isn't any advantage to be gained by going on a trial. And if the patient information leaflet suggests that in any shape, way, or form, it is specifically excluded and even removed. But the advantage of going on a trial from a patient perspective is that I might get access to medication that wouldn't, in the normal routine pathway, be available to me. Are there any downsides? An important consideration. Clinically, I wouldn't think so. In many respects, I would say that the only downside would be possibly on your time, insofar as during a trial, there may be more monitoring. You may have to visit hospital more for tests as part of the conduct of the trial. So the only downside could be logistical. The upside is that you will be looked after better by virtue of the fact that you are being subjected to this enhanced monitoring. I do see already there was a comment in the Q&A about someone who thought that their side effect wasn't looked after. And I think that's an interesting real life experience that and that type of input is typical of the type of input that we at CLL Support give to trials management groups and the groups that are setting up trials. But in the end, there are a whole host of decisions to be made. And the decisions will be undertaken by the person with CLL and their family member or trusted confidant. And all those decisions will be made on the basis of informed consent. Ben, yes, he touched on it, but informed consent from my perspective is that I can fully understand what is going on here, that all of my questions, my fears, my worries have been addressed, and it's up to me to make a decision based on all of that information. I know I won't be hurried. Quite often, I will write down any questions I would have on reviewing the various pieces of documentation that I'm getting. And I will ask either the consultant or a CNS, possibly more likely to be a clinical nurse specialist because they might have more time to be able to give me, or one of the trials nurses involved in the conduct of the trial. And it's really a case of we are all in this together. The graphic I've put up there of all of these hands really represents my participation in a trial where all my data was used. And risk and reward, post-COVID, we have all become much more familiar with this term of risk and reward. And by virtue of the fact that clinical trials are set up so that you will not be disadvantaged, then to hark back to my earlier bullet point, downsides, I don't think there are downsides. I don't think there is a risk. I do think that there is a potential upside participating in a clinical trial. Eh, Over the last couple of years, I have been involved quite a lot with input to clinical trials, and my knowledge of clinical trials has improved significantly. But nevertheless, in preparing for this webinar, I did do some research, and it was really interesting where I went on to the NHS website and I was pleased to see that there was a specific area on the NHS website on clinical trials in plain English. And it was an easy read. It was understandable. It gave me a good 360 view on clinical trials. And because it was the NHS, it wasn't skewed in any way towards pharma. It wasn't skewed towards a particular trial management group wanting to have any influence, not that they would, but I found it very reliable and reassuring. Two other fellow charities who are much bigger than CLL Support is Macmillan Cancer Support, and they have a number of articles on their website with regard to taking part in a cancer clinical trial. Clearly, it is a general cancer. It is not specific to a hematological cancer like CLL. And however, Blood Cancer UK have an equally informative and readable guide on their website. And as part of the output of this webinar, we will provide those links for anybody who would like to follow up on them. So really, the last bullet point, somewhat flippant, but that's my normal mode of operation. Where do I sign up? Well, you sign up when you have an opportunity, either via your treating clinical team to access a clinical trial, or if you have done your own research. And you will probably have already heard that we at CLL Support have a strapline where we say an informed patient has better outcomes. An informed patient is a patient who understands their condition, understands their treatment pathways, options, and also is able to do some research into what might be available to them and have that informed discussion with their treating clinical team. As a patient, I'm not a qualified clinician. However, I am responsibly informed and to a level that I can understand and allows me to be able to figure out what's in it for me, but also to be able to look at the sites which Ben talked about, the UK CLL Forum, the clinicaltrials.gov, and we on our website also, especially in the new version of the website, will signpost to clinical trials. And you can see whether you are available or, eligible to sign up for a clinical trial, and you can have that discussion with your clinical team. So with that, I will just check all my notes that I've said everything that I wanted to say. I would say that any trial that I've been involved in terms of reviewing documentation for, it would be a comment I'd make on it would be that it's an eyes wide open. There are no hidden agendas. All the information is available. So it is not a case of in any big contract where you've got to beware of the small print. There is no small print.